Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Prodigy from Kilo23. Recently I went out to Nighthawk's D-Day event. It's a ton of fun. Ran my Arcturus Centaur B out there all day. It was an absolute blast. We had a raffle at the end of the day and I ended up winning the brand new gun that they were raffling off. This is one of their ASL models from Valken. Most of the guns they raffle off out there are either used guns, like they had a couple of AKs, or some of these Valken guns. So I lucked out and last ticket drawn was mine, so cool, I got a new gun. So this is the Valken ASL Mod M in black. I was kind of surprised by the gun. I'd reviewed a Valken Battle Machine a while back, like I think a year or two ago, somewhere in there. Really wasn't impressive. Hop-up didn't work at all, needed some extreme tuning. It just needed a lot of work, and out of the box, any player would have been disappointed by it. It was a real letdown. And for 150 bucks, you're basically throwing that money away. Now, I will say this right off the bat, this is a major improvement. It is a much, much better gun than the old battle machines were. Primarily because they're using the, I think it's the Gen 3 SRC internals. It wouldn't surprise me if the entire gun were OEM'd by SRC. I'm not really sure, at least the internals are. But there are some definite improvements. And a lot of the internal upgrades, improvements I'll go over kind of in a little short picture segment later on. I'm not going to do a full video on this because it's, I've already done a battle machine review a while back, so this is going to be more of a kind of a quick overview, hit on all the key points and nothing too crazy. So the battle machine. First impressions, I plugged a battery in, shot it. Wasn't really great sounding. It really sounded like a really badly tuned ICS, kind of like that dying cat sound you hear of an airsoft gun, like bad shimming, bad motor height, things like that. So of course I tuned it, I did all my usual stuff, and it sounds a hell of a lot better. But before we talk a whole lot about the gun, I'll talk about what it comes with. So we're gonna get a 300 round high cap mag. I really hate this magazine. Please buy other mags. The winding wheel is so far recessed up in here that it's kind of hard to get a grip on. It might help a little bit with gloves, but it takes forever to wind this mag just because there's so little contact between your finger and the winding wheel. You get a cleaning rod. It's kind of normal. The gun comes with a fuse in it. I hate having an extra connector in here for a fuse. I wish they'd just connect the dang thing in there. Extra resistance, that's bad. Because Valken, I guess, is so anal about California law, they give you a roll of orange tape, and you get actually a decent little manual here. Definitely worth reading for you new players, but anyone else that's buying or using this gun, you know how to use it. And you get a silica gel packet. Yay. So starting off from the back, retractable crane style stock. It's a little bit different. Fairly wobbly, but it's actually says on the box, I believe, that it's got a mil-spec metal buffer tube, and the buffer tube is like 90% of the weight in the back of the gun. It's a heavy metal thing. I think it's a 5-position retractable stock. Battery goes in the back here. Originally it had a Tamiya on there, but I went ahead and installed a Dean's connector on here, so it fits all my batteries. I will say this, disassembling the gun was a serious pain. There's a hole that goes through the buffer tube adapter on the body on the back here, and essentially you either have to cut the connector off or remove little pins in there. So I ended up cutting it off and actually hacksawing a chunk out there so I could easily take the connector, because the Dean's is wider than a Tamiya, in and out of the buffer tube without a problem. So it took some work, but it's just a pain when you're working on it for the first time. You guys that are going to actually, work on this, just keep that in mind. So that's something to think about. It'll fit, any nunchuck or 7.4 stick. Don't put an 11.1 in this; it will blow it up. I guarantee it. What I actually really liked about this, because I'm an MP5 guy, this uses a cotter pin right here for your adjustment lever, and you actually have to take this out to remove your stock here. So this is actually the same size as like an MP5 pin. So if you really need an MP5 pin and you've got a Valken Battle Machine sitting around, you can just salvage this. That was kind of cool. A little sling loop is plastic here. It's a little plate between the body and the buffer tube here, so that's kind of a nice touch. It's really cheap plastic. I wouldn't trust the gun slinging it around with it, but it's up to you guys. Sights on this are kind of odd. You can use them both flipped up and flipped down because we've got this little plastic green insert here to kind of replicate, I guess, tritium inserts. They work, kind of, barely. You can see them. I can't really guarantee the glow in the dark at all, but they work. And of course, you've got your flip up. It's only got one aperture here, the larger aperture, and then flip up on the front as well. These are only, the rear one's adjustable for windage, not elevation whatsoever. Being an airsoft gun, it really doesn't matter. Most people are probably gonna just aim and shoot anyway. I don't even use iron sights half the time. I just point and shoot. Yeah, that's what the selector lever is for, full auto. Ambi fire selector is kind of nice. Adds a little bit of difficulty assembling and disassembling it, but it's really not much, so just a cool feature to have. Mag catch is ambi as well. You can press it from either side, and it's metal, thankfully, not a cheaper plastic one. Ooh, what else we got? Charging handle reveals the hop up. I found that only about half the time it'll actually pop the dust cover off. You have to kind of angle it so it'll actually do it properly. Now, what I was really kind of ticked about with this gun, obviously I didn't pay for it, so I can't really be too disappointed, is that the box and the website both say it has a working bolt catch. That is completely not true. Don't trust that fact, because the bolt catch cannot be caught. The gearbox shell does not have the hardware to catch it, so that is a complete lie on the part of Valken, unfortunately. But it does have your standard version 2 M4 hop-up under here. You get the little adjustment wheel there, so really simple to get to. Thankfully, the hop-up does work on this model. The first one I got a while back, hop-up didn't work worth crap. This one actually works quite well, and strangely enough, had a concave nub in there. I didn't get a picture of that, unfortunately, for later on, but I will mention that now, so kind of surprising. Moving up the gun, kind of creaky rail. It works. You got a rail. It's all plastic, though, so if you want to put vertical grip, rail panels, light laser, whatever you got, go ahead and throw it on there. The front end does have a 14mm negative threading, but it's underneath the barrel adapter here. So you've got your outer barrel, it's going to stick out a bit, and if you want to put it like a suppressor or a different flash hider on, it's going to go here. Whereas this one has, I think it's like a 12mm adapter. I don't know if they changed that or not, but I decided to leave the flash hider on there because I'm actually selling this in a couple of weeks, so I'm going to leave that there. Kind of flimsy front little sling loop, kind of noisy, but at least you got a sling loop up front to kind of counteract the fact that this is a plastic catch right here and I wouldn't trust it. So externally, it's not bad. It's definitely a different kind of almost billet looking body. The magwell is flared, so it's kind of a nice touch to get your magazine in and out a little bit faster. So that works well. It does have what looks like a individualized serial number here, so it's kind of a nice touch to know. No, I don't know. It's kind of a fun fact, at least. Now let's go ahead and put this on the tech table and look at the internals real quick. For the internals, we're going to start with the motor here. The motor is it's more of a stock motor. It has a little bit more torque than most motors. They call it a high torque motor, but it's really kind of just a slight step up. It does not have neomagnets like your traditional high torque motor does. It does have an O-hole pinion, so it's kind of a nice touch as well. Definitely a lot of pinions out there in case you do need to replace it. Your hop-up chamber is going to be metal. The spring on the front is actually Loctited into place, so it won't come off terribly easily. There's a lot of kind of random Loctite sitting around the hop-up chamber, kind of odd. Something I will note later on as well, these screws in the gearbox are Loctited, so there's a generous use of Loctite inside of the gun. The barrel looks to be an anodized aluminum. I'm not sure of the bore, I want to say 6.05 offhand, but it's a 300mm inner barrel, and it looks to be pretty decent quality considering. A small copper ring was also Loctited in place to keep it there. The bucking is kind of a medium thickness. I want to say probably somewhere between 50 and 60 degree bucking. It's kind of a gray texture, so it was decent looking. I haven't had a huge chance to test out the range and accuracy on it, but it looks to be good quality. The back of the metal hop-up chamber did have an O-ring around it that kind of helped seal it in place with the gearbox shell. I can't really say this does a whole lot for air seal, but it was kind of a cool idea. The gearbox shell on this is pretty standard. You'll notice the flat trigger kind of has a cool ribbing there. I do like the flat trigger on this, very comfortable, nice touch from Valken for sure. The gearbox shell is pretty standard aluminum, nothing too crazy about it. You'll notice the anti-reversal latch does have a flathead notch that is accessible from the outside of the gun. There's a hole through the body to actually disengage that and decycle your gearbox, so definitely some forward thought from Valken there. I did notice when taking it apart though that one of the motor wires here was kind of crimped and slightly broken on the casing, so I wish Valken actually took the time to assemble these better, or SRC, or whoever assembles them. Internally, the gearbox shell was really dry, not a whole lot of grease or anything like that. It was a really inconsistent air seal actually between maybe like 320 and 370 FPS. Is a big gap. It's just so dry inside. After tuning it and lubricating it properly, I was getting closer to like a 5 FPS deviation. Much more okay with that than having like a 25 FPS deviation. That was insane for a stock gun. But the internals of the gearbox shell are still decent. 6mm, really smooth bushings, you'll notice here. And the other side of the gearbox shell, you'll notice regular old 18 gauge wiring, that flat trigger a little more close up here. The gears are a dead giveaway. This is an SRC. I really do like their gears. They may not sound the greatest, even when tuned, but they're still pretty solid gears. It does have an aluminum double O-ring cylinder head, so that's a nice touch. Also another dead giveaway, it's an SRC. The nozzle on this has an O-ring inside of it, but for some crazy reason it seals really poorly with the cylinder head, so it's almost like not having an air seal nozzle there at all, just a standard nozzle. It's a good idea, but it's really poorly implemented. The cylinder looks to have the same anodizing as the inner barrel. It's also a aluminum cylinder. It's a Type 0, so there are no ports on it, which is kind of a weird match with the inner barrel. It's 300mm. The piston, also very SRC. Pretty standard polycarb. Second to last tooth is not removed. I did remove that incorrect angle of engagement, of course, with the servo pad, and one metal tooth at the front. The piston head, also pretty standard, is ported, of course. And as noted before, the anti-reversal latch does have a little notch there to decycle the gearbox. What I found really odd, I've actually never seen this in an airsoft gun before, is the fact that the gearbox shell was kind of half radius. It's like they got halfway through the process and kind of changed their minds. It's hard to say if this is a quality control issue or something that maybe they just overlooked. I'm not really sure. I ended up completing the radius on the top as well before assembling the gun. The spring guide is metal, so that's a plus. You don't get a cheaper plastic one. It does have a hole going all the way through it, so reinstallation of the spring and spring guide is definitely easier than some of your cheaper ones. The spring is right around an M100 or M110 power. I was getting about 370 feet per second out of it. The base of it, where it contacts the bottom of the spring guide, looks like it was kind of crimped inwards. Hard to say if they're trying to make sure it stays on the spring guide or if this was really poor quality control. So overall, these run about like $150, give or take, depending on the model, depending on where you buy it. I've seen them as high as 160. I think as cheap as 140. They're definitely your budget gun. They work well enough, but to be completely honest, I would not use this gun unless it were tuned properly. Out of the box, didn't sound great. I don't think it was going to work well at all. The rate of fire was kind of poor on a 7.4. It's actually much better once you tune it. The trigger response is much better. The rate of fire is much better. So just even minor things like that, like a good shim job and things like that, will absolutely help your gun so much. The person I'm actually selling this to in a few weeks, they wanted it shooting under 328 FPS for Eagle Freak. So I'm going to be selling this off. He's getting a really good deal on it. And I got it shooting right around 300 feet per second for him. So I dropped an old Modify M90 spring in there and shoots great. Originally, this was shooting like 370, so more of a field legal FPS. You know, I really can't say I'd recommend this gun a whole lot without tuning it. So if you're a new player, you're looking to grab this, either have a tech tune it up for you or go find a different gun. Take my word on that. It's just my opinion. Take it easy, please. But definitely look at other guns that are right around the same price point. There's a lot of guns out there for under $200 that'll shoot and sound much better than this. And you're probably getting a much better bang for your buck. But just with basic tuning, AOE correction, servo pad, correct shell radiusing, unlike what was in there originally, and just a good shim job, will go a long ways. So right now, I would probably shoot this over like a combat machine just because it's tuned. But there are much better guns. Like a G&G combat machine is definitely a better AEG than this by far. But that's still a matter of opinion. That's just my opinion. I think the G&Gs are much more consistent. A lot of the Echo 1 less expensive guns are fantastic guns as well. I've had a lot of experience with those, and those are a lot of fun to work on, shoot great out of the box, and shoot a lot harder and straighter than this. So keep that in mind when purchasing. You know, I really wish Valken would step up their game and actually tune these a little bit better and just have a little bit better quality. The externals on this have a lot of seams. You can really tell it's a cheaper gun, and the body is not bad. It's definitely a better plastic than some of the cheap AEGs out there, but you know, there's still pros and cons. You're still only paying $150. You're not getting a super high-end gun, but the internals, once tuned, are actually not half bad. So things to think about when you're getting this, you know, as a loaner, as a field gun, doesn't matter. So I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 10. It needs tuning, it works, but it definitely could be a lot better. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm Prodigy from Kilo 23, and I'll catch you next time.